Virtual reality is only just beginning to find its footing as a platform. As developers begin to realize that not every VR game has to be first person or be restricted to only a few genres, we're going to see some truly great experiences. But while making our way through some of the trials of figuring out the best ways to use VR technology, we're going to be playing some games that seem half-baked. Theseus is not what I expected. I expected a God of War clone in VR. God of War, this is not. It does, however, provide proof of concept that a third-person action game works in VR. Though I couldn't help thinking of how awesome an actual God of War game in VR would be. While Theseus has some flaws and leaves you wanting more, it's not bad. Just probably not what you may have been expecting. For this review, I want to discuss the story, gameplay, graphics, sound, and immersion, and then at the end I'll have some final thoughts. This game loosely follows the myth of Theseus and the Minotaur. But in what seems to be a trend with VR titles, it feels like a small segment of a larger narrative. There are so many legendary tales about Theseus that could have made for one epic campaign. Even reading this myth, you get the sense that the game's story could have been so much more fleshed out. It feels like an attention-grabbing opening sequence that should then open up to reveal an epic adventure. For example, I would have loved to play through the Six Labors. It seems like the perfect narrative for an action game. Theseus in the Six Labors deals with various enemies using his wits and combat prowess to overcome the obstacles in his path. And while I enjoyed making my way through the Labyrinth, the Six Labors would have provided variety in the puzzle solving and the combat, and just made for a much better game. As I said before, I went into this game expecting a God of War clone in VR, but there aren't a lot of similarities to that franchise. Theseus is mostly a slow-paced puzzle game with little variety in the puzzles. You're either hiding from the Minotaur or climbing ledges, figuring out how to navigate through the rooms in the labyrinth. There's no character development or progression system. Early in the game, there's at least a sense that you're gaining new abilities, but it's because you begin the game with nothing and find a few items along the way. There are no stats to level up or weapon augmentations to be found. The torch burns stuff and the sword cuts stuff, and that's about it. For a while, I thought it was going to be a walking simulator. Then I found the torch, and I could use it to keep enemies at bay. Later I found the sword, and I could kill enemies. But that's the extent of the progression in Theseus. It's more stealth than action, and other than the Minotaur itself, there's only a single enemy type. There is potential for so much more to be happening with this game, but for some reason, Forge Reply didn't seize the opportunity. As is the case with many PSVR titles, Theseus looks like a PlayStation 3 game. The Labyrinth itself, aided with the sound design, is immersive, atmospheric, and creepy. You truly feel what you would imagine one feels when making their way through such an eerie place. But there are some jaggies, and the view from within the headset is nowhere near as crisp as you'll see in screenshots of the game. The entire world around you shakes and crumbles as the Minotaur makes his way up and down the corridors. When you finally come face to face with the creature, you experience firsthand how massive and terrifying he is. This is the main advantage VR holds over flat gaming. The sense of presence and scale makes this much more engaging and immersive than would ever be possible on a flat screen. Theseus is played in third person, but the angle of the camera constantly changes. There were times when I couldn't see what I was supposed to be looking at because Theseus was standing in my way. Other times the angle changes to a sort of fly-on-the-wall perspective that can be a bit jarring when transitioning from one room to another or walking around a corner. Sometimes you may need to take a second to get your bearings when the game switches camera angles. Even though there are some things that could be better, this game is still very immersive. Theseus is far from perfect. It moves at a glacial pace for much of the time. The graphics aren't as sharp as they could be. The combat could be better, and it feels way too short for what it could have been. That said, it is an atmospheric experience with good sound design, and confronting the Minotaur in virtual reality is something to behold. If you accept Theseus for what it is, you'll probably enjoy it. I did. But I would say wait to find it at a huge discount. Then maybe you won't feel like you wanted more out of it. The missed opportunities here are frustrating when you think of what the game could have been. It just whets my appetite for a truly epic God of War VR game. If you have any thoughts on Theseus, or you have a VR game you would like to see me review, or you just want to say hi, comment below. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video, and I look forward to bringing you more VR reviews very soon.